Hello and welcome back to 3D, the Development Design Digest, where we look at rural development through the design lens, how we can create whole society solutions to bring progress and prosperity to rural India. Today, I'm very happy to be joined by Gajanan Rauta of Transform Rural India, an Associate Director who is in charge of public policy and action. That's right, with the season upon us of good governance, we want to talk about how working with the government is crucial to rural India because let's face it, rural Indians depend on many government resources. So unless you're working with the government in rural India, you could argue that you're not really working for change in rural India. You have to be working in tandem, don't you? Yeah. There has to be an embedded process. Gajanan, thank you for joining me today. Thank you. We're going to dig into this now. I'd like to know, first of all, it sounds very impressive. PPIA, Public Policy in Action. What does it mean and why is it important?
Yeah, first of all, thank you, Lindy, for inviting me and having this conversation today. I think the public policy in action, so there are two different segments into this. One is the public policy and second is in action. So there are a lot of talks around a lot of very good policies that the country has drafted, but there are always challenges in terms of implementation. So when we talk about public policy in action, it is all our effort in the endeavor to make action on the ground to better implement the policies that have been drafted by the government, which are for the poor and which are for the rural areas. So our effort is always to implement those policies in more efficient and more productive way. So that we call as public policy in action. And that's how TRI associates with the government. TRI works with the government to bring more efficiency into the program's delivery. So, and as you rightly mentioned about the role of government among in the lives of poor. So, if you look at India and specifically in the rural areas and the people, those who are affected by poverty, so they are actually disproportionately dependent on the government, be it on the basic entitlements and the basic services. So rich and upper middle class people have that advantage of taking benefit of the entire system. They know things, they know how to navigate through the system. So they are in an edge. But poor, for their own survival, they have to depend on the government, be it the ration, be it the education, be it in the primary healthcare segment. So everywhere they are more dependent on the government, and that's how we think in TRI that if we work with the government, the impact can at least reach to the last mile, and we can bring more efficiency into the government program, so the impact is scalable.
So let's talk about how that plays out. I think it's interesting. We hear the word embed, and for many people, we associate that with journalists embedded in a military platoon. Yes. During a time of war, to get right in and be able to tell a story at the sharp end. But I guess it's very similar without the war and without the journalism. You're embedding within the government so that you can be at the sharp end. Work that through for me. Tell me how that plays out.
Yeah, basically embed, I think you portrayed a negative connotation, but for us...
So it's very positive. We need journalists to be doing that work, but yeah.
Yeah, as referring to the war zone where journalists go, it's not like that. Here, when we work as an embedded cell, basically we work with the government, and that's why we say whenever the government is creating a strategy and what we are contributing, we say we are co-creating. So it's not that we create or the government creates, but it's a co-creation of strategy or co-creation of policy. So the way we look at engaging with the government is like there are priorities and there are mandates for the government which are very clearly defined. Okay, this is the outcome that we are achieving. The objectives are very well defined, but we need to find out ways how can we make it more effective. How can we make it more simple so that in the shortest period of time it can be scalable? So we put a lot of our efforts in terms of brainstorming ideas. We try to understand what will work, what will not work. So we work with the government, just contributing how best we can contribute so that whatever designs that we do, be it policy, be it a guideline, or be it a program design. So whatever we pitch in, we our entire effort is to make it more efficient, more simpler, so that it is accepted widely and it can impact the rural households. And our focus is more centered around how it can benefit women on the ground.
And just to be very literal, you are literally sitting in the office at different government levels. That's what we're talking about with embedded. So you have a desk in a government office. You people in your team would be going to government meetings and would be helping form policy. And this is at all levels of government, right? So
Yes.
you're working at the central government in Delhi, but also at state levels and even down to the district levels.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So what are the programs? I understand as well you've got a big team, because part of what you're doing is trying to bring fellows on board, a younger cadre of workers on board. So let's talk about the different fellowships that there are too.
Yeah.
And why is that important?
Yeah, and I think TRI's approach to this entire government engagement started in 2018. So initially there was a program, and again Honorable Prime Minister launched a program called as Aspirational District Program. So what the idea was that if you look at India and compare different states, so they are in the different stages of development. Few are more prosperous, few are not that so great in terms of development parameters. So the idea was to bring parity among the districts, so that as a country we can grow. So for bringing the parity, there are 112 such districts which were identified and based on certain development parameters. And we have been approached by the ministry and the Niti Aayog to collaborate, and that's how we came into picture. We worked with the Ministry of Home Affairs. So Ministry of Home Affairs is one of the critical ministries which look into the issues of left-wing extremism, and there are around 35 districts where left-wing extremism exists in 2018, and the Minister of Home Affairs was mandated to bring developmental change in those areas. So as part of the aspirational district program, we worked closely with the Minister of Home Affairs in those 35 districts. So we started from there, but the learning happened that these districts and these locations are actually disadvantaged locations.
Yep.
They are resource rich, but in terms of governance, in terms of government's delivery of primary services like health, education, agriculture, water resource, and every parameter, if you look at the delivery mechanism, it is somehow lacking compared to the prosperous districts. So our effort was to put two very motivated young people from the development sector with little bit of experience, but they have an intent to do something for the poor. So we hired people, and it was a very standardized process. We selected people. For us, intent and motivation was the primary factor rather than somebody's skill or educational background. So we wanted people, those who are having commitment to work for the poor, but with the government,
Okay.
not against the government. So we selected people like that, and we have placed two fellows in each of the district. And we worked there for almost 3 years, and the kind of results that we get is amazing.
It really is amazing. The fact, and why do you think that is? Actually, before we answer that, I just want to go back a second and say, is this mismatch there? Because a lot of these programs are drafted in the great halls in Delhi, or even at state level, but usually they're central government programs, right? They're drafted here in Delhi, but then implemented somewhere where the language is different, the customs are different, the people are different. And is that why there's a mismatch? Or is it because the people in Delhi are too urban to understand the needs of rural India? Why is there a mismatch?
There is still a mismatch, but here one of the critical challenges that the government wanted to cater to was in terms of bringing governance in those regions. Look at the belt, for example, all the aspirational districts. It is not very much resource poor. You have natural resources there, you have lots of government grant that is going over there. But the challenge was in terms of the society, the ecosystem there, which has been for many different reasons keeping that area, backward. So the entire effort was to bring more governance in that particular area, so that the public delivery is better. But in most of the programs, if you will look at, I mean, as people say, ki people are not poor, but places are poor.
Right.
And those places are poor only because the entire ecosystem doesn't support the way it should have been. So a lot of consultations are happened. Are being conducted, and then a policy paper comes. Lot of experts from different parts of the country come and deliberate on those issues. But still, as you are also rightly mentioning, when a policy is drafted, India is so diverse that it can't meet everybody's expectation. So, and our effort is to bridge that gap. How best we can customize, or you can say tweak little bit, so that it helps improve program delivery.
Okay, so how does TI's approach to the activation of services differ from other organizations that might be in the same space?
Yeah. So,
What's the secret sauce?
so the secret sauce is that we work with the government, and we are completely aligned to the program's mandate. And from there only we think, ki if this is the goal that we have to achieve, what things that we need to do. So there are community where there are aspirations, demands, and there are a lot of expectations that the government will deliver on this. And government is as a supply side, they have certain mandate. Now to bridge these two, there will be some connector who can understand both government and understand both the society and the community. So in TRI we have teams and people who are working with the community and also with the public system. So TRA basically plays a role where the team that works with the community understands the community aspirations, the community requirements, and articulate in a way that within the government programs, how best their demands or expectations can be fit in. So the colleagues those who work with the government, they understand that these are the community aspirations and community demands. Now within the government's framework, how can this be deliver better in those particular area? So that the interaction between the community, people working with the community and people working with the government, we want to create a bridge between these two. And if you look at the systems now, so there are certain areas where for very small issues things stuck. For example, communication. Yeah. Suppose a letter is written from New Delhi. So it takes the average time span is around 3 months to 4 months to reach to the functionary at the block level or village level. Though we say it's being circulated over WhatsApp, it's placed in the website.
Yeah.
That the functionary reading that letter.
These days, everything is instant.
Yes, but reading that letter, you get a message in your phone, but then you read it and then you understand it. So the core stage, which is understanding, it actually takes time.
Right.
So the message given from New Delhi to reaching to the village or to the panchayat or to the block office. So that building that understanding actually takes time. And in the process, there are certain communication loss also happens. So my colleagues, those who work with the district administration, they very much put their effort in terms of simplifying what the goal is, what are the processes which are very well defined, how to implement it properly. These are community demands, how these two can be met in the shortest period of time. So we put a lot of our efforts in terms of bridging those gaps and designing small solutions which can cater to those needs.
Interesting. And that's very different to the way it's been done before?
There are, the TRI brings another perspective to this. We work with the government with the intent that we can improvise the government service delivery. So there are certain, even in the policies, everything is not right. There are certain areas which are contextually, few things are not right. Yeah, there is a mismatch. So there are voices, suppose there is something coming up from the community. So we also tabulate before the government. These are the concerns that we need to think about it. Maybe in the existing policy we cannot make changes, but these are the concerns that we tabulate so that at least it registers in the government's mind that these are the areas where we need to further improvise. Let me just give one example during our fellowship. And there is a program called as Village Health, Sanitation and Nutrition Day, VHSND. It's a program which was implemented by the Ministry of Health through the health department of every state government. Now in the VHSND, what happens? So community people, women, children, adolescent girls, boys and patients, they do come. It's a place within a village where people come every month, and there are a lot of testings do happen. For example, hemoglobin testing is done. If somebody has minor health issues, that is also being checked. If it is a pregnant woman is coming and she has recently conceived, then the first registration for antenatal care. So that happens, right? But one thing we realized, so one of our colleagues was doing a survey. What is the participation level of community in those VHSND? So across the districts, we tried to map it, and we found that in few regions there are a lot of participation, and few regions there is very less limited. I mean, hardly 10 or 15 people come, and the duration of that VHSND day lasts for average time span is supposed to say 3 hours, but in few areas it is hardly for 10 minutes or 15 minutes. So the question was, why is it not happening in this particular place?
Right.
Then we further tried to understand why it is not happening. And one of the reasons we identified is that suppose a woman comes and for antenatal care checkup she has to make the registration, but for basic testing she also requires certain privacy. So if there is not a table to lay a person for doing checking, and if there is not a simple screen just to maintain privacy, that people don't come.
Yeah, of course.
So you just think about it. It's a very small issue. Just putting a screen, you'll retain somebody's privacy, and it will improve women to come for the health checkup. So that was missing. So this guy actually helped in terms of identifying why it is not there. So from the resources, they try to understand these are the small issues that we need to solve, so that in 1 month at least the people will come. They will take 16 odd the health services at the village level. Similar is the case. I mean, the hemoglobin meter. You will not find the hemoglobin meters distributed into the ASA and Anangadi workers. So if it is not available, how can somebody do a measurement of hemoglobin? Right. So these were very small issues we identified, and we brought into the notice of the district administration. And the district administration acted on that.
So this is fascinating to me for several reasons. One is that often it's very, very small blockages which can block the whole pipe. Because once you have 2 or 3 different blockages, that's it. Nothing gets done beyond. And then a program resides, just sinks. And the funding is there and it's not deployed, it's not used. And then eventually the funding gets taken away because they say, well, nobody was using it. But what's fascinating to me also is that how did this not get filtered back?
I mean, there are disconnects. For example, these issues, somebody has to look at it very closely. And one who visits community and one who meets with the ASA, Anganwadi workers, they can understand to these are the requirements. Though it is that there may be certain issues with the procurement system, there may be certain delays in terms of supplying those equipments. So there is, I mean, the intent is good, but because of the time lag, people are suffering. So we try to have both the voices from the community. We try to understand where the resources are. We try to bridge that gap.
And what I love, of course, is it brings us back to design, because that's taking that bird's eye view. That's saying, look, we know you work over here and we work over here and there's a few other silos in between, but actually we need to take the whole picture and we need to go back to the end user, and not just, the stakeholder or the customer, client, however you want to refer to them, but different stakeholders along the path, right? Because there can be blockages at any point, right? How much do you feel that there's a design approach to the work that you're doing on the PPIA?
Yeah, I think in all the programs we try to bring most of the design thinking into place. I'll cite one example of one government program where we have tried to bring that aspect as well. So it's the Lakpati Didi initiative, which we work with the Minister of Rural Development, with the National Rural Livelihood Mission. So there, if you will look, we try to understand that Lakpati is just an outcome of different small interventions for economic advancement of women. So we just try to understand for economic prosperity what are the ecosystem level needs that a woman requires at the household level. So there are four things that we try to identify. One is an asset, either infrastructure, inputs, or you can say land, everything. Then the second is ability to execute or practice some more efficient way practicing, be it agriculture or be it business or skilling. Third is access to finance and access to market and then access to technology.
Okay.
So these are the primary requirements.
Yeah.
Now who will deliver all this?
Yeah.
So we'll try to understand what is the role of the rural livelihood mission, what the market can play a role, what civil society can play a role, and what the community itself can play a role.
All very different silos.
Yes. So there are four primary stakeholders in
Yes.
this. One is the government, second is the Panchayat Raj institution, third is the community, and fourth is the market.
Yep.
Now all these four have to come together so that that entire area will flourish.
Yep.
Right. Now this is how we thought ki how can we bring all of them together. So we supported the government in terms of creating that strategy where all these four things were mentioned. Ki how to improvise the planning, how to adequate and timely support assets, skill, finance and market, and then capacity building, and then how to bring in convergence. So we started with, for example, interacting with the market is the most difficult task.
Okay.
Because market works in a different principle. Government has a more welfare intent,
Of course.
but market has a profitability intent. And bringing them together is one of the most difficult tasks.
Okay.
That what we try to do is that we try to create small workshops where we'll invited market players. And our intent was to understand how the market functions.
Okay.
And how the rural women, suppose say she is producing pomegranate.
Yep.
How that pomegranate can be supplied to that market
Right.
with the most efficient supply chain.
Yep.
So we tried to interact. We had small roundtable discussions with different market players, and it built a perspective among the government also. Okay, how the market functions. If we have to onboard, what are the spaces that we have to offer to them?
Because they want it to work.
Yeah. They are willing to work, but that platform or that space creation was important.
Yeah.
So this small intervention of having a roundtable discussion with different experts and industry players actually build that understanding ki how the market functions and how we can leverage their strength. So that's how we tried. Similarly,
It's a design lens, isn't it?
and similarly we work with the Panchayati Raj institution.
Uh-huh.
So we understood the entire guideline how the Panchayat Raj planning is being done.
Great.
Every year there is a Gram Panchayat development planning that happens. Now how women can contribute more in terms of placing their requirements in that Gram Sabha meeting, so that it is integrated into the Panchayat's planning.
Yes.
And the government system then further will deliver into that.
Yes.
So those mechanisms we tried to do, and we piloted in few districts, few areas of our geography, and the results are very good.
Yeah. I mean, so basically what you're telling me is the Grand Panchayat development plan was always there.
Yes.
But it was how do you connect the dots from women who you're trying to build their confidence, help them vision what they want for their future, but also have a say in it.
Yes.
They can have a shop, they can possibly even be a panchayat, but actually, if you're not developing part of this plan, if you're not in the table and in the room when that plan is getting written over several days,
Your voice is unheard.
then your voice isn't heard.
And again, I mean, if you look at the last 3 years journey, it takes time to onboard different players into this and integrate women into these planning processes. So in the last 3 years, one significant improvement which we have observed is that earlier, if you look at the Gram Panchayat development plan, I'm specifically talking about the area where we worked. So the kind of sectoral interventions that was planned in that panchayat, earlier it was mostly on infrastructure, roads, then you have irrigation infrastructure, then you have street lighting. Those kind of items were listed in the plan. That right now, if you will look at the plan, it is more diverse
Okay.
in terms of different social and economic aspect. People have started talking about health infrastructure. They have started talking about a boundary and a conducive learning environment in the school. They've started talking about more a pressurized irrigation system at the household level, so that agri productivity will improve. So the plans are getting little bit diverse and more comprehensive.
It's not just about a bridge. It's not just about a piece of infrastructure that may or may not get built, because often those plans were just full of these big infra projects or small infra projects that maybe the community didn't even want, but somebody did, but the community might not have. Now you're bringing in health, wellness, education. I'm seeing a more community touch there to the plans, and then that also by also visit the community, they can see that results begin to happen. That becomes a domino effect where even more people want to get in on the meetings and the GBDB, don't they?
Yeah, and one more element towards gender, or you can say bringing in women into this planning process is something that we are really proud of. For example, suppose say कि uh, in a block there are block development officers and a lot of government officers are there. But when a community go and interact with a government officer, there are a lot of confidence you need to have within yourself, because you have to go and interact with a government officer and you have to influence that these are our requirement and government should focus on this. So would
And all sorts of baggage and background, different types of communities coming from, different types of education, I mean, it could be very intimidating.
So one of the things was again a government program which is National Rural Livelihood Mission. So where they have created this platform of self-help groups. Now these self-help groups have actually given that confidence that as a group we can go and represent. So at the cluster level we have a federation. So the federation leaders, we have been engaged with them to what you can say. How can you effectively communicate your ideas, or how will you negotiate something with the government officers when the meetings are there, how the meetings are happening in the government officer, how decisions are being made. Now if you have to, as a representative of the community, if you are going there, how will you place or table the demands of the community there? So there are certain processes, and with humility you have to say something. So those meeting protocols in a very formal setup, maybe a community leader might not be knowing, right? So we are also trying.
So you're teaching them the rules of the game, basically. We can call it building capacities, but actually you're letting them know how the game is played.
Yes.
Is it hard?
Yeah, and because gaining that confidence and going to government office and speaking.
Because what I love about this is, at no point are you in the room in that meeting. You're saying, we're going to help you be in the room in that meeting, right? I mean, there might be occasions where you overlap, but what I'm saying is what you're trying to do is get the community to be able to speak for themselves, make their own decisions, and have their voices heard. You're not there saying, oh, we're the big NGO that's coming in to help you and get these decisions done and talk to the government and get it done. You're actually just trying to empower them to do it.
Yeah, that's part from day zero only. We put it in our design.
Yeah.
In our absence, things will move. That's the bottom line. And we have to, empower or aware somebody to that extent that they should not need us at all in terms of raising their demands or voices.
You know you've done your job when they don't need you anymore.
Yes.
Nice. Okay, last question. I know you're very busy and I appreciate your time, but I just want one more question, and that's the big money question, which is, how difficult is it working with the government? Big bureaucratic machine, lots of personalities, lots of tiptoeing, I guess. Is it easy, or is it hard, or is it just all in a day's work? I mean, how do you balance all the different and also going back to the fact that there's people are working in silos, and what you're trying to do at TOI is see the lacunas and make the bridges, right? So you're trying to get two departments often that don't talk to each other to talk to each other. It must be really difficult.
Yeah, it's difficult, but I think it's doable, because me and the colleagues with whom I work with are wonderful, and the government, wherever we have worked, I mean, especially in the central level, if you look at the departments like Niti Aayog, Minister of Home Affairs, Minister of Rural Development, Panchayati Raj, Animal Husbandry. So with all these ministries we work, and I think the officers are incredible. They have been quite supportive. but there are challenges as you mentioned, and but what drives us to work with the government is the intent, because there will be a lot of resistance. Even if you work in a private or a corporate, you face similar kind of challenges. Here the challenges are little different, but the intent, because for in our head we always think that if I spend half an hour of my time productively, it can impact 1 crore people, or you can say 10 million people, which you can't do it in a corporate, right, or in a private sector. So that scale is always in our mind, and government is I mean, it takes time to build policies, which is again good, because a lot of thinking goes into that. And I think we must learn to have patience with that entire process. And the government has a welfare motive, they have certain protocols to follow. And I think that people often outside, those who work with the government, don't understand that intricacies, and we think right is not so fast. But those are accountabilities which are in place, and I think as a citizen and as an individual, you must respect that.
And that is important. Accountability is important. But I think I just want to end with that. The magic word, or maybe the secret sauce, or the magic word that you said there, is scale. And you can really achieve scale when you're working with the government. So many organizations, many businesses can do things in small ways. But when you do end up having that work with the government, it can just take off, can't it? Yeah. Well, great. Well, thank you very much for your time and for sharing your insights and the experience that you've had doing it. I appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed it too. Really insightful stuff there. Please keep watching, sharing, and we'll see you next time.